Deaf people of Reddit. How scary is farting in public? Funny thing. I have severe hearing loss. I finally got hearing aids and realized that many of those silent but deadless were just deadly. My family never told me. They thought I knew and was just being a dad. LOL. If I found out that my gassy father had been farting in front of his family all the time simply because he didn't know we could hear him and not because he was being goofy, I would laugh myself insane. I'm late to the show, but I feel I absolutely must share. When I met my now wife, I had a real understanding of the ramifications of her hearing loss. I knew she was partially deaf and that we needed subtitles for television. Through our relationship I learned oh so much more. One thing in particular, I learned I could blame any flatulence on the dog easily. Now, originally, I thought this was strictly smell related, but as I came to understand, I could fully rip one in front of her, so long as I didn't lift her butt cheek she wouldn't suspect me for a second. Fast forward, I'm regularly in the home letting loose loud farts. Not smelly, but not sneaky, at all. Turns out, I oftentimes forget that in public, not everyone is deaf. Silent may not be deadly, but loud farts can be heard by normal people and judged accordingly. Shit. Same situation. But I'm the one with hearing loss. We playfully blame 100% of farts on the dogs, even when they aren't in the room. But it's pretty easy to tell a dog fart from a human fart. Your wife knows. My group of deaf friends let it rip whenever they want, but I suspect it's because they don't give a duck. I hold it in and wait for a good time with no one around. I have to say I did rip a beast of a fart when I thought no one was around, not knowing that someone was rounding the corner. He looked like a bomb victim approaching the mushroom cloud and I didn't wait around to see his reaction to the smell. I once farted in an empty elevator, just as the door was about to open and I was going to get off. Instead, it was an extended fart, and someone was there, and they watched me finish the fart. Needless to say, I got off right then. The look of betrayal in their eye kept me away from elevators for a good week or so. Obligatory thanks for the gold. I'm glad you're taking so much joy from this. Almost balances out the karma of leaving that stranger in that cube alone with my gas. Multiply second edit. Did I get linked from somewhere lol? Golden comments 2 months later. Thanks again, I'm just confused how my fart gets this much traction. I have deaf family, so growing up meant going to the deaf club every weekend. Big event, etc. Being a child at but height in a room full of deaf adults who casually rip ass because no one can hear who dealt it was traumatic. What's the deaf club? The first rule of deaf clubbies, that nobody hears about deaf club. My dad is deaf, and every summer we go group camping with many other deaf people. One particular year I was hanging out with my dad's girlfriend at the time and some of her deaf friends. In the middle of the conversation she let a huge one rip. I was the only hearing one in the group and we were outdoors, so really I was the only one who knew. After the conversation was over she asked me if I had heard her fart, and we had a pretty good laugh about it. If a deaf person farts in the woods, does it make a sound? Not deaf, but I do have congenital anosmia, which means I have had no sense of smell since birth. It's difficult to appreciate the issue of farting when I can't fathom smell. I tend to just let them go and hope no one notices. Technically, it can never be me who dealt it, since I can't have smelt it. We are always taught that smell and taste are so intertwined. How's your sense of taste? Fully realizing you don't have experience with normal to compare it to. Real answer: I go to the bathroom if I feel like I'm going to. Don't want any mishaps. A fart is, after all, a poop that's crying to come out. It doesn't seem to bother my deaf 6-year-old. I'm not sure if that's because he's deaf or 6. Verdict is still out on that one. I mean, my 6-year-old understands. He runs around the house telling the world I farted. When he does it, he blames his sisters. A friend of mine works with deaf people and says they fart all the time whenever, wherever, because they have no idea it makes a sound. What I don't get is they don't feel that terrible internal rumble and release all that pressure and let her rip and stink out of place, but think it's okay because they can't hear it. As a teacher, I'm accustomed to junior high kids farting, but today was something special. An 8th grader who has a hearing aid farted in class, and it was really loud, and it smelled like decaying flesh. He happened to be sitting near the shelf where I run my essential oil diffuser, and the scent of his fart mixed with the orange scent I had going and created its own new concoction. It lingered for quite a while too. I'm still shuddering thinking about the stench I had to pretend to ignore. My mum was a primary elementary school teacher. She has a story of this one time when she'd had a curry for lunch and felt an almighty gurgling in her stomach. Cut to story time, where she sits on a chair and all of the kids sit on the carpet and gather at her feet while she reads to them. There's always that one super enthusiastic kid that has to be first in line, first to raise their hand, etc. This kid would always eagerly sit right at the base of her feet. This is when she says she couldn't take it anymore. She seeped out a hot fart that smelled like a homeless threw up into a used nappy and then left it out in the sun all day. All the kids are going, "Oh, what is that?" That one kid is practically gagging and goes, "It's making my eyes water." My mum says she was trying to hold back her chuckle and just calmly said, "I think whoever did that needs to go outside." My grandma's hearing was going downhill, and it was hit or miss if her hearing aids were working right. So my sister and I have to take her to mass one year while my mom stayed home to watch my dad dying at the time. This is like most cathedrals, high ceilings, stone floors and walls and wooden pews. The deacon was in the middle of his sermon and my grandma lets loose. Now, grandma was overweight, so that created a bit of a seal that she blasted through, reverberating off the wooden pew, stone floors and walls, all the way up to heaven itself probably. The sermon stopped momentarily, the deacon's mouth hanging open as everyone turned to look, but the deacon recovered quickly and things carried on. Later, in the car, my sister said, "Grandma, what the heck was that?" "What? You farted?" "Oh, I thought no one would hear." Not nearly as scary as when I found out getting an erection makes a loud noise. Boing. If you fart in a crowd but don't hear it, did you even fart at all? The mass of people who passed out would tell you yes. There is a deaf guy that I work with. He takes the loudest shits. Like you can tell he is pushing as hard as he can. I wanna tell him, but that shit's too hilarious. My mostly deaf co-worker down the hall randomly belches at full force usually once a week. Until I figured it out, I thought there was some air trapped in the building pipes. Turns out it was just in his. So apparently there are these interlocking kind of fibers in your nose that allow you to smell. If they get separated or severed or whatever, that's it. No more smellings. Denizo. They never grow back. I used to work with this complete asshat that got hit by lightning, and apparently it zapped his nose fibers and he could no longer smell. I always wondered what it must be like for this poor bastard to pass a quiet bit of gas and then just never know if he got away with it. I have a couple of friends who can't smell. The girl is always asking if she smells, and she is super paranoid about using deodorant and not farting, not doing anything that may smell. The guy doesn't give a duck. On my uni course we have a guy who's deaf and in our first, yet he lived in the same halls as me, so we would regularly see each other and catch the bus to class. So one day I step into the lift on my floor and he's in there, so I wave and give him a thumbs up. I didn't know sign language, so tis was how I would basically say, "Hi, how are you?" and we rode the elevator down. I then realized I needed to fart badly and thought, well, he's deaf, he won't hear, so I'll let rip, and my god, it was loud. I was so proud of myself till I realized the smell was like someone was decaying in the elevator with us, and he just started laughing maniacally and typed a quick message on his phone, which said, "Haha, don't worry, everyone does this, you aren't the first to fart and think I wouldn't notice. Edit typo, dead for deaf." This would make more sense for blind people. Deaf people may not be able to hear it, but they can look around and make a judgment call. Blind people basically have to guess how many people are around by sounds. A library, for instance, would be a tough call to make. Buses might only be the driver or the whole back of the bus could be full. trolley or subway. Some routes it's a crapshoot packed car or not, and everybody trying to make as little noise as possible cause nobody wants to be noticed. Never thought about that. Maybe they could send out a tiny preemptive fart, using it as a means of echolocation to judge if it's safe to release the beast. I've been married to a deaf wife for 33 years. I've been to many deaf functions, often as one of the only hearing people there. They are the quietest functions you'll ever attend. A lot of fly swatting signing along with a lot of grunting. Some deaf have very good voices. My wife is one. Many do not. Hence the grunting. These folks saying they rip ass all the time may have experienced that. I have not. My wife does fart though, and they are ducking killers. Of course I call her on it signing. Did you just shit? She gets all self-conscious and tells me I do too. That was never in question. I just like calling her on it because it kills her. Oh well. 33 years of marriage and this is what you have. I have hearing aids, so I can hear farts. That said, I love letting out stealthy public farts. My favorite fart was when I was in high school biology class. We were doing a lab, so I walked to the end of the room to get something and let out the nastiest fart I have ever made in my life. I walked back to my spot and a couple minutes later the teacher yelled out that whoever farted needs to see a doctor. Heh. In the deaf community we do have a saying about farts God made. Farts smelly so that deaf people could enjoy them too. Deaf and from a deaf family, I can hear a bit and figured out at a young age that farts made noises and generally try to hold it in. Had a few embarrassing incidents but nothing compares to my mother's. She turned deaf at the age of 1 because of illness. Grew up stone deaf in a hearing family where nobody bothered to learn sign language to communicate with her, but she attended a deaf school in New York City, so she wasn't completely isolated. My mom's family are upper class elites from Long Island, so appearances mean a lot to them. But it wasn't until mom met my dad at the age of 23 when she finally learned that farts made noises. Dad is hard of hearing, and when he heard her fart that first time he cracked a joke or something, and she was absolutely mortified. Of course they make noises. You can feel it coming out of your butt, can't you? Yes. Peeing and pooping also produce noises. Yes, the water splashes loudly. She couldn't even pee in public for years after that. And when she confronted my grandmother about it, Granny just shrugged and said you were the deaf child. Nobody cared. When I was in a school for the deaf, I came up with a witty idea to pull farting prank at table of deaf kids at lunch and in a time in the cafeteria. What I would do is walk up to a table of deaf kids and mimic farting by lifting my right leg and quench my face as if I just released a big one. Since a majority of the table can't hear me rip a false fart, they would usually plug their nose and tell me to leave. Some would get up and move to another table. This would go on for a week or so before a majority of the kids caught on to what I was doing and simply ignored my false farting gestures. It was epic because I pulled a false flag prank on unsuspecting deaf kids. It was glorious seeing the reactions of everyone at a table. Made my days in high school worth it. To be completely honest, and from an always farty but never poopy farty dude, I've gotten used to it. I can't actually control it muscularly either. So when it comes, it comes. My rationale is rather selfish. I'm often surrounded by over-perfumed girls and over-deodorized guys. So what smells bad to me is that. And I deal with it. So you can deal with a little fart. And anyways, smells disperse and dissipate after time. Okay, I've got a weird second-hand anecdote. My stepfather is a psych professor who had to attend regular meetings with another professor who was blind. Yes, blind. This professor would regularly fart, very loudly, in these meetings, while carrying on with the business of the meetings like nothing had happened. I was assigned to the same lab table as a deaf girl in chemistry and her sinuses made constant noises that she wasn't aware of. Guess she had allergies. She had a mean Pentecostal lady for her ASL interpreter, so none of us could really strike up any rapport with her except to smile and wave. I always felt bad she was having to drag that mean bitch with her everywhere in college. Since this is just a fart story thread, I thought I would share mine. In high school my friends and I were working on a project, Our entire class was in the library to use the computers. Anyway, my friend had decided it was a good idea to eat a few volcano burritos for dinner the night before. Well, he let out what has to be the worst smelling fart anyone could ever lay. My friends and I are dying of laughter, eyes watering from the smell, causing a huge disturbance. The teacher walks over to yell at us. She gets about 10 feet away, and the look of anger instantly turned to disgust. She turned around and walked away without a word spoken, on causing another uproar of laughter.